You're tuning in to the Black Hollywood Live Network, featuring news, interviews, and commentary on all things Black Hollywood. Hollywood redefined. From Los Angeles, California, presented by Maria Menounos and streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies. This is Black Hollywood Live. Justice is served. Featuring the week's roundup and commentary on legal news. Black Hollywood Live. Hollywood redefined.
You're listening to Black Hollywood Live.
And now, the host for Black Hollywood Live, Justice is Served.
Hello and good morning, everyone. I am your host, Mari Fagel. This is Justice is Served, and we have two special guests on the line this morning that will be joining me, Susan Burton and Tiffany Johnson from A New Way of Life. Good morning, Susan, and good morning, Tiffany.
Good morning. Good morning, Mari.
Now, A New Way of Life is an organization based here in California that helps formerly incarcerated women re-enter society. And I actually read about this organization. I was reading the book, Orange is the New Black. I watched the season, I was reading the book, and then in the back of the book there was a list of organizations that the author had recommended. And that was the first time I heard of A New Way of Life. And then I went online and I was reading about Susan, you and your personal story, and I really was fascinated. You, really turned around your life and took some personal tragedies that happened to you, and now you are devoted to helping other women. So, Susan, just tell me a little bit about your personal story and how you came to create A New Way of Life.
Okay. So it was 1982, and my 5-year-old son was ran over accidentally by LAPD detectives. And I was just shattered. My grief was just so unbearable, I began to drink. It was my first time ever dealing with grief. And my drinking escalated to illegal drugs. And that got me incarcerated over and over and over again. After being sentenced multiple times to prison for having possession of an illegal substance, I found someone who helped me. I found a place in Santa Monica that reached out to me, helped me with my addiction, helped me with therapy. I addressed my grief, and I was just appalled that there was something different for me that could have been for me than prison, and couldn't understand why I hadn't received that prior to all of those prison sentences. So what I said I was going to do is reach out to the women like me who had been caught up in a cycle of incarceration because of a substance abuse problem. And I created a new way of life. I worked and saved money and got a little house, and at that point, I would go down to the bus station and greet women as they were getting off the bus, saying I had a safe place for you to return to. If people have services and supports coming back into the community, they don't recidivate. The recidivism rate in California is well above 70%. And what we've done as a new way of life is made success 80% for those women coming back that come to our homes and receive services.
And now, Susan, when I was reading about your personal story, you mentioned, so you served 6 prison sentences for drug-related felonies. And I was reading, I thought it was interesting, on your way out, a prison guard even said to you, "I will see you back in a little while." And this is what it's like for a lot of women. And I was fascinated by the fact that you would go downtown and pick up these women off the bus. They only have $200 in their pocket. So explain to me what that was like for you before you started this program, what it's like to just be dropped back off, very little money, no place to stay, no job options. What do you do?
I mean, you're on a bus, you're released from prison, and the guards are harassing you on the way out the door, sort of playing with you, telling you the only place you're going to get a job is in prison. And in prison, any job that you get, you anywhere from 5 cents an hour to $1 an hour. $1 an hour would be like a real high-end executive job that people are making, 6 figures. So, you get on a bus and you're hoping with all of your heart, with all of your soul, that you're going to make it. You don't want to return, but you get off a bus, you have no ID. I mean, it's a long ride, a 5-6 hours ride, and you're sitting there and you've been tormented and tortured and caged while in prison, and then you're free and you're giving all of these rights back, but you have no resources. You have less than $200 because you brought your bus ticket, and you're hoping that you make it, and you're trying to navigate, and you're dropped off downtown Skid Row. You get off a bus and you're trying to make it, and the odds are so overwhelmingly against you, but there's the hope in your heart that you do make it. And without the resources, without supports to heal from the trauma of incarceration, to support you to get an ID, to have an address that you can even mail an ID to have a place to come after you're trudging the streets, trying to get a job, trying to comply with your conditions of release, trying to reunite with family, trying to do all sorts of things to bring your life back together. So what I found that is key to have a safe place to be and to have encouragement and support through your trudge back to the community, your trudge to just live.
So tell me about the resources that A New Way of Life provides women once they contact the organization.
So we pick up upon release. We provide you with food, clothing, shelter, a place that you can belong. We have social work services. We have resume writing. We have different types of classes. Last night we had a class called Leadership Education, Action, and Dialogue, where we have conversations around the broader societal landscape for formerly incarcerated women, for poor women, for women who are, trying to make it back. And, what are some of the obstacles? What are the realities? What are the isms of the world? From racism, classism, sexism, homophobia, and capitalism. Because what we see is that companies capitalize on those that are unfortunate enough to be incarcerated. And those same entities and businesses and organizations that profit from prison, they don't give any services to people, any resources to people who are reentering. So it's a real capitalism sort of effort. Mass incarceration breeds capitalism. So we look at all of that through the LEAD project.
And now, Tiffany, I want to bring you in. I want to ask how you came to find A New Way of Life and how it has affected your life being a part of this organization.
Well, I found A New Way of Life while I was serving a prison sentence of 15 to life, and I had to go in front of a board, a parole board, to see if I can get released. And right before I went to, I think, my third board hearing, I came across a flyer in the prison that was circulating about A New Way of Life and all that they offered. And so I took a chance on writing the woman who had found the interest in Susan Burton. And I asked her, I told her my story, and I told her I was a lifer, and I didn't know when I was going to be getting out, but I needed to have a resource and a place to in order to take it to the board so they can hopefully find me suitable for parole. So I wrote her this letter and asked for a bed whenever I did get released, and she wrote me back and she said, no, whenever you get released, I will have a bed open for you. Well, it was 6 years later that I got granted parole, and we contacted Miss Burton again, and she said, I still have that bed open for you, and then you coming. So that's how I came to be at A New Way of Life. I went there in 2010, April 28th, and it actually started my new way of life. And I mean, it was scary, but amazing at the same time, because I walked into this home that you just walk in and you feel the love and you feel the support. And there are people who are the staff that works there, they just embrace you, and they're there to help guide you. I did 16 years. I did 16 years on my 15th to life sentence, so I was away from society for such a long time. I really didn't know how to re-integrate back into society, and there are so many things that had changed. So I didn't know how to cell phone. I didn't know how to turn on a shower. You know, I didn't know how to go to the grocery store and swipe a card. I'm like, what is the swiping a card? You know, but Ms. Burton, she actually took me hand by hand and taught me everything that I needed to learn to fit back into society, as well as her staff. You know, they helped guide me into going to get the necessary paperwork, my driver's license, my social security card, my ID first, but, you know, and my social security card, and it just placed me in the right places at the right time, and they gave me the support, you know, so that's the experience I got out of A New Way of Life, and to this day, I still get out of it. You learn something new. The home, when you leave the home, you really don't leave the home, because it's family, and family looks after family. And so you keep in touch, and they keep in touch, and they want to know what's going on, and if they can help, and what do you need, you know. And so it's a way of life that is showing you so many different outlooks on life, that if you have a dream, you know, go after your dream. That's when she teaches that a lot. You know, she wants you to find your dream. What are you thinking about? What do you want to do in your life? How do you want to become a success in your life? And once you find that out, she helps guide you to that dream.
And now I want to ask about some of the conditions within prison that may be affecting the high rate of recidivism of prisoners returning back to prison after their release. Obviously, in California, there's a big issue of prison overcrowding, and that's one that the state has tried to address in reducing the number of inmates. How do you think that prison overcrowding and the programs that have been put in place thus far to try to reduce it have affected prisoners inside and even your chances outside?
Well, the fact that, you know, society thinks that there's a lot of programs inside of the prison that is going to help rehabilitate the people that are there. Well, they've cut all those programs. There used to be school and job training and all that stuff. There's no longer none of that. I mean, maybe a handful of school, like you can get your GED or some type of training in there, but it's only limited to a certain amount of people, like maybe 20 here and 30 there. Well, you have a prison of 4,000 women. That means that only 1% of them can actually get some type of education. You know, so we're really left in there to fend ourselves, you know, and the coming back out to get a job, because, you know, yeah, while we're in there, we're working on ourselves. We're trying to, we're doing the best we can with what's available, which is really nothing. So, but when we come out, it's so hard to obtain a job, obtain living conditions, because, you know, you have to you got to go through the cycle of filling out your application and checking a box that says, have you ever been convicted of a felony? And, of course, you have to say yes, and then saying yes, you're denied that job at the start. They don't even, so we run up against so many barriers. And so I think the rate of recidivism is based on the fact that once we do get released and we want to change and we notice and we find out that the society does not want us to change, we're left to our own devices, and you have a choice. Do I die out here or do I survive? And so your survival mode kicks in, and sometimes it's a legal survival mode, but you have to survive. And so you get caught. You're caught in that trap. You're caught in that cycle that the system has been designed to keep you in.
And I want to ask you about a program in New York State that may soon be implemented, and your thoughts on this. Governor Cuomo announced a plan for New York State to again begin funding college courses for inmates. Prison inmates there are eligible for mainly high school level courses. They used to be eligible for state college tuition assistance money until the program was cut in 1995. Do you think something like that would be beneficial not only in New York but in California?
Yes, I mean, of course it would be beneficial, because education is success, right? We all want to educate ourselves, but even in that education, I mean, I know of women who are doing time or have done time that has gotten their AA, their BA, their master's, but they come back out to society and they're not able to utilize that.
So
they're not able to utilize that.
So what is the second part of that? Because if, providing education programs in prison, it gets you one step further, what can be done to help people secure jobs once they do get out of prison? Because as you mentioned, they put on that application, they check the box of have you ever been convicted of a felony? And as you're saying, that the application doesn't even get a second look at that point. So what can be done?
I mean, I think society as a whole has to realize that people change. We've committed a crime. We've paid for our time. We've done our sentence as the law says. But people change. Give us a chance. Stop looking at us as second-class citizens and realize that we're all together. It's each one teach one type of thing. They say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, our communities are our villages, and I think policies are going to have to be changed, and people's minds are going to have to be changed just to give people a second chance at life. We all want to do better. We all deserve the right to obtain a job, not only a job but a career. We all have that right to live in a particular house, whatever neighborhood we want to live in, and not be rejected. Because we're constantly rejecting people. You're stepping on their self-esteem. You're stepping on their egos. You're stepping on them to where they start believing it's a condition that is being taught that you're nobody, and we are. Everybody is. All put on this earth to live and survive, and we all should help each other. So I think that the policies really need to be changed. Voting comes up, and a lot of people go and they don't really even know what they're voting about. Take the time to read and educate yourself on these particular laws and the things that you think that is going to help your community. Don't just read the bold print. Read the fine print also, because in that fine print is going to tell you exactly what's going to really happen. And, most of the time we vote and you say, okay, yeah, this is going to be a good thing for our community. And then we begin, and months later, a year later, we realize, oh, my God, is that what that meant? So let's take the time to vote and help change some policies.
What laws in particular are you thinking about when you make that statement that people didn't read the fine print and they don't realize the consequences of these laws down the road?
Ms. Burton, what was that law on? Yes, thank you.
I can think of one, and that was Marsy's Law. So Marsy's Law was advertised that people will be notified of the person being released who might have assaulted them. But what it did, and people were already it was already a law in the books that notified people once their perpetrator was released. But what added to Marsy's Law was a clause that people serving life sentences would have a 3, 5, 7, and 15-year delay in going back to the Board of Prison Terms for release. So that part, people were like, yeah, we need to notify. People need to be notified if their perpetrator is released. But what it did is delayed people's release that had been serving life sentences. And you can only imagine spending 20 years rehabilitating yourself, and the Board of Prison Terms tells you to come back in 15 years. So that's one law. Also, the 3 strikes law that actually got repealed this last election. That was a law that was implemented in a way that people didn't understand, that people would be getting 20 years or life sentences for stealing or for petty theft.
And while we're talking about laws and voting, I want to talk about the voting rights of former felons, because that is an issue that is currently in the news because Attorney General Eric Holder has now called for the repeal of laws that prohibit felons from voting. In California, former felons may vote, but the state prohibits voting by people incarcerated in prison or on parole. And I want to read a quote that Eric Holder said this week. Those swept up in this system too often had their rights rescinded, their dignity diminished, and the full measure of their citizenship revoked for the rest of their lives. What do you think about what Eric Holder has said?
What Eric Holder said is right on. You know, we struggled as a people. I'm talking about black people, to have the right to vote. My mother marched. My grandfather died to have the right to vote. And when we talk about voting rights, I think of this one individual, Flozell Whitmore, who also served a life sentence. She went to prison at the age of 19 and was released at the age of 40. Was released at the age of 45. She worked at A New Way of Life for 4 years, and I remember she was supposed to get off of parole in October of 2012. And they did not take her off parole. Flozell never got a chance to vote. She registered because she thought she'd be off parole by the time of the vote. She's a 50-year-old woman who died. She had an aneurysm. And she never got a chance to vote. And what harm does voting do for people to exercise? I think that we want to have people be a whole part of our community, have responsibility for civic participation, have accountability for the way they live their lives in our communities, and to deny them the right to cast a vote is wrong. Their sense of purpose and human dignity to be included in such a process that we're so proud of in this nation.
So do you think that people who are in prison should have the right to vote? People who are on parole should have the right to vote? Should that right never be rescinded?
That right should not be rescinded. What harm does it do for people to actually be able to cast a vote and be included in this democratic process in America? Why should people be excluded from a democratic process in America? You know, we're a nation that races to incarcerate. We're a nation that takes people's freedom away for every and any social ill, and then tell them they're not good enough to vote. They have to be discriminated against for the rest of their lives.
And now I want to ask you,
America,
and I want to
the
ask,
land of the free. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry to cut you off. I want to ask you about something last Friday that took place, the Linwood prison rising last Friday. Now, according to the Sentencing Project, women in prison are more likely than men to be victims of staff sexual misconduct. More than 3/4 of all reported staff sexual misconduct involves women who were victimized by male correctional staff. So tell me about what you guys did last Friday and what can be done to address this issue.
So there has to be a heightened level of accountability for correctional staff, that people who are inside are protected, and the way in which they're treated are people are accountable for. You know, we pay their salaries. We don't pay their salaries to rape and to misuse, humiliate, and strip women. So I've seen male staff watching women being stripped, and it reminds me so much of the slave lines of the 18th century. Women being stripped and told to turn around and bend over, and just humiliated and degraded in the prisons. And then there's children conceived by guards while women are incarcerated. So we rose outside of Linwood Jail. We did a rising and a dance in representation of those women who were behind the walls, to stand up to say that we're watching and we're present, to stand up in honor of their lives, and to let them know that their lives do matter. And I learned a new dance. I learned a new dance too. It was really a wonderful day, and we plan to do a bigger rising next February 14th, February 2015.
Well, one of the things that you mentioned, you talked about how some of the women are impregnated by the male guards. It reminded me of something this week. Governor Deval Patrick in Massachusetts is also trying to initiate a new program to reduce recidivism. One part of that is a ban on the shackling of pregnant prisoners while in labor. The other series of changes is a renewed focus on substance abuse treatment and limits on the use of restraints on mentally ill inmates. What do you think about that program?
I mean, women shackled while giving birth is horrible. And, you know, I applaud him for his efforts to make a better to change the way in which people are treated. These are things that we need to do nationally. And there has to be a lot of attention and focus put on what do we do with people inside, and what do we do to prevent them from going inside. There just needs to be a bigger, broader focus.
And now, as I mentioned, sorry, go on.
I was going to ask Tiffany if she had comments on that. You know, there's also this sterilization program going on within the prisons. Also, I don't know if you've read or heard about that in Chowchilla State Prison in California.
And tell me about that.
So they have a yard in Chowchilla where they keep all pregnant women, and all the babies are delivered by cesarean section. And the women are offered, and it's strongly suggested that when they have the cesarean, that they agree to being sterilized. So if you're away hundreds of miles from home isolated, and the doctor keeps prodding you to become, to have this procedure, and the state of California, the taxpayers are paying for it, then, you know, you're pretty isolated and you can be persuaded. So they have a sterilization program that's going on in Chowchilla State Prison that is just a violation of of women's rights and human rights to be persuaded like that. Also, it violates the California Department of Corrections codes that they're even performing this procedure.
So if it's violating the code, how is something so terrible going on?
Well, you know, they kind of act like they're outside of the law overall, and there are legal agencies, legal organizations that are pursuing getting to the bottom of it. ACLU, the law office, the prison law office, and the organization Justice Now. They are pursuing it, but I mean, the way in which our Department of Corrections they operate as if they're above and beyond the law. And that's why the federal receivership, the federal courts mandated and took over the prisons.
And did either of you, while you were in prison, see some of these things that we have been discussing in terms of the sexual abuse, pregnant women giving labor in shackles, some of the things that we've been discussing? Did you witness that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like I said, I've spent 16 years in there, and I've seen all kinds of sexual abuse going on while in there. Every day you're locked up and you're released. You're controlled on the yard. You're let out your room to go program. You're let out your room to go eat breakfast. You let out your room to go eat dinner. Your schedule, you know, you're locked down at certain hours of the day, and at night you're locked down at a certain hour every night, which gives the guards some control over you and you're just control over you, period. Well, at night, depending on either if you're working the night shift, because some inmates are work the night shift, you're left alone with a guard or two, which are mostly male, you know, and they get you to a point to abuse you sexually, and you can't do anything about it. You're told that you can't do anything about it. You know, if you tell anybody, then you're going to lose this. What is the word I'm looking for? You're going to lose activity. You're going to be locked up in. You know, we're going to make sure that your life is delivered, hell while you're here. So you give in to the notion that they have complete control over you. You know, some of the officers, while everybody is locked down in their room sleeping, supposed to be sleeping, they're going around unlocking doors and picking and choosing which women they want to have sex with that night. You know, so... Go ahead.
And then I've seen sexual favors for food.
Right. Right.
Yeah, happen. You know, sexual favors for makeup. You know, it's just atrocious what happens.
And as I mentioned at the top of the show, the way I came to find out about your organization was actually through reading the popular book Orange is the New Black, which is also a television show that had its first season, which was, for many people, almost their first introduction into what women's prison is like. People who are so far removed from that and separated from that saw... You know, obviously this is a show, it's based on a true story, but it's fictitious, and it is a drama but also a comedy, so it's not exact. But some of these things that you talk about was in the show, you know, the sexual abuse. One of the characters, right. Tasty, she was released from prison and then returned back shortly after because it was so difficult for her on the outside. So I want to ask you about that show, whether you think it's an accurate portrayal and what you think of it.
So I think that the show really has people talking. So I'm really glad that the show has been written. It's not an altogether true portrait of what happens in prison, but it does shed light. So I'm really happy that they have created a show that brings to the attention of most folks, most Americans, that, you know, people who watch it, that has people talking about what's going on here. Yeah.
And now tell our viewers and our listeners, if they want to find out more about this organization, how they either can get involved or just to find out more information, where they can go.
Yeah, they can go to our website, anewwayoflife.org, to find out more about the organization. And if they want to get involved, they can just send us an email through the website, or we can be reached by phone at 323-563-3575.
Well, thank you so much, and I want to thank you both, Tiffany and Susan, for taking the time out this morning to discuss these issues with me, and thank you both for joining me, and hopefully we can have you on again in the future to discuss some more of these issues.
Okay, well, thank you for the show, and thank your listeners for listening.
Thank you. And that was Susan Burton and Tiffany Johnson from A New Way of Life. That's anewwayoflife.org. We will be back in a couple weeks with some exciting special guests. Lisa Bloom will be here discussing her new book, Suspicious Nation, about the Trayvon Martin murder. So we have some exciting guests coming up. Stay tuned. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I'm Mari Fagel. Tweet me at Mari Fagel. Have a good day.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, Dario Kristen, and the entire BHL staff, we would like to thank you for tuning in to the Black Hollywood Live Network. If you have questions or comments, tweet us at BHL Online or email us at info@blackhollywoodlive.com. For more exclusive content, visit blackhollywoodlive.com. This has been a presentation of the Black Hollywood Live Network. The views expressed here are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of BHL or its owners or principals.
Thanks for watching Black Hollywood Live on YouTube. For more in-depth interviews and news, subscribe to our channel here, and be sure to share your opinion in the comment section below here. See you soon, everyone. Bye.